Welcome to Sacred Stories Podcast, a place to explore and discuss new and exciting books of consciousness. I am your host, Reverend Patricia Caginello, and speaking with authors that have shared their wisdom and stories in a higher consciousness through their books is one of my favorite things to do. Today we are speaking with Helen Brennand, a contributing author to our new book of inspiring stories, Chaos to Clarity, Sacred Stories of Transformational Change. Helen is also the author of the book Belief, and she is an equine professional based in England. She's an accomplished writer, trainer, and holistic therapist. Helen has a passion for horse welfare and respects them as sentient beings. Complementing her writing, Helen's time is now dedicated to her horse sanctuary, The Haven, founded to ensure a lasting and safe place where a horse's inner wisdom is free to be released and allowed to shine. So welcome, Helen Brennand, to Sacred Stories.
Oh, hi, Patricia. It's lovely to speak to you.
Yes, I'm really excited and looking forward to our conversation. And for our audience, full disclosure, I have visited the Haven in England, where Helen's horse sanctuary, and Helen has created just an absolutely beautiful place on earth. And her herd of horses, or the herd of horses, are just extraordinary conscious beings. And so Helen, it is just a pleasure to have you on the show.
Yeah. Oh, well, it was lovely for you to visit as well and experience them, because I do, and I think you'll understand this, it is, you do have to experience it, don't you, to fully believe just how conscious they are and how they do connect with us on this deep level.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. I want the world to experience the consciousness of the beautiful horses, and the horses are actually part of the sacred story that you wrote for our book, Chaos to Clarity. So if you can start by not telling us the whole story, because we want people to read it, but what is the sacred story that you did write for our book?
Oh, well, it was great to write for the book, and it was great. It's a great opportunity for me to share the experience, which was losing a child and being guided through the process of grief by this beautiful herd of horses that we have and care for here at the Haven. But simultaneously, they were helping me understand and cope with the emotions that grieving, brings forward. But also they were opening me up to this sort of innermost part of myself. It was like they knew I had to understand the emotions that I was working through, but I would never fully move through the grief if I didn't become aware of this very deep part of who I was. So the story is where I share a little bit about what happened and how we lost our little boy Samson, and then I really sort of go into more detail about what they were trying to show me during that time. And the outcome, obviously, of the story, and how I went on to start to share what they had shared with me. So that's sort of where the story goes.
I have to say that your story about Samson, your son, and the way that you wrote it really, it's heartbreaking and it's heart-opening at the same time. And I just want to acknowledge your ability and your courage to be able to actually put into writing and share with others your that experience, because the way that you explained the loss of Samson and what you did and how your family even initially showed Samson the farm and showed him the town and all of the things that you did. I'm going to get emotional right now talking about it. Helen, honestly, the courage for you to endure that, but then revisit it in writing and share it and talk about it now. I just thank
Oh,
you. Thank you for
oh.
having that heart to do that for others.
Well, I think one of the most beautiful things that happened during that, period of loss was that because I was raw and I surrendered to that sort of being vulnerable and allowing absolutely everything to surface meant that I was reconnected with him in a different way. And I think what gives me so much strength with the sharing aspects of the stories and the work we do was I know I'm working with him. I know we're a team. So he might not be here on earth and I don't have him physically, but every time that I pick up a pen and write, that is one of the sort of exciting things about writing now, is that each time I share a little bit more of the story or how the horses work with me, I know that he is sharing something quite important to others, that are in my life or that pass, my path in life. So it is this constant knowing that we're a little team in a new way, obviously.
Yeah, you know what? Thank you for sharing that. I think that's a really beautiful way to think about it, because Samson, was an infant, so you lost him at birth, and so the knowing that he is with you and you're a team is really a beautiful, deep knowing, and I believe it as well. The horses are also with you. So a very big part of your story was the way that the horses started communicating with you on a much deeper level and helping you process and release your grief. So how did you know that the horses understood the heartache you were experiencing?
Well, I think initially because I think, and anyone who suffered any kind of grief knows, you sort of die to this world, and I wasn't functioning in the material world. I was unable to speak. I was just going about the daily jobs, as a matter of fact, just to get through the day, and I was very present. I didn't realize it was bringing me into the present moment, but in that raw state, that's where I was. And I witnessed it was again one of those experiences where you have to sort of be there to fully just see what they were offering in an unspoken way. It was the gentleness, the focus that they had with me, the way they moved around me, the facial expressions. I could see that they felt every bit of pain that I felt, but they didn't pity me, or it's like they held a vibration that was much higher, so that I didn't sink into the feelings that we feel when we lose someone. It was that they were pulling me up to look and really, really search within all those emotions to reveal what I needed to learn about emotions. So it was always sort of this twofold experience of this gentleness, this offering of unconditional love, this nurturing, but at the same time, it was like they were opening something up for me to really examine. And as the process continued, and it still does to this day, they started to bring what I can only describe as subconscious data, I suppose, that was withheld in me into my daily sort of consciousness for me to examine. And I would examine what I saw, and I would start to understand me in a whole new way. And it was it sounds obviously very bizarre that this creature that doesn't speak can manifest all this just by being with you in a state of empathy and understanding. But the more I've learned as I've grown and understood and learned from them, that this is how they communicate with each other. You know, it's innate, it's biological. They never surrender that part of them that connects to another living being, to help heal, to help understand and bring them back to themselves. So it was something that I could not have owned, if that makes sense. Their energy was that powerful. Their eyes just drew me in, and they just surrounded me with everything that I needed at that time. And it changed as I was growing and I was understanding more. They offered more in different ways. So it was beautiful and sad at the same time, because they brought things to the surface that needed to be healed, especially when we realised that a lot of the belief systems that we've held and carried aren't true. And you know, even when you know they're not true and you let go of them, there's a grief for that. So there was a grieving for this little child, and there was a grieving for parts of me that I was letting go of. It was quite a phenomenal time, one that was life-changing for the better.
Well, I mean, it changed your life, and in doing so, it has changed so many others because of work. You know, the work that you've changed my life. Coming and meeting the horses and my experiences with them. You know, let's talk just really briefly about Donner. You share in the story. So Donner is one of the leaders of the herd. And when we talk about how they communicate and what happens, I mean, much of it is certainly on an energetic level, and you have to experience it to really get it. But one of the things you explain is how Donner's actions mimic yours.
Yeah.
So talk about that, because I think that's very profound as a way that the horses actually physically communicate with us when we're willing to look.
Yeah, well, that I think is the first step. If you can sit and observe and just bring yourself into the present moment and be still and just watch. That was the moment she really got me. This morning I walked onto the yard, and her eye was on me, and her body language, it was showing everything, every part of who I was, how I behaved, how I was acting and reacting to things that were going on in daily life. And her facial expressions were, it was just like looking into a physical mirror. And as soon as I acknowledged that was me, and she was saying, look at me, this is you, what are you seeing? As soon as I acknowledged it, even before I'd chosen to do anything about it, or how would I do anything about it, how do I get back to being who I am, she would change. And I was sort of blown away by this. I thought, gosh, she's not judging me for this. She's not saying this is good or this is bad. She's saying this is it. This is what you represent at this time. And becoming congruent with that, so acknowledging it and owning it, she settled. And then I would see the others would mirror different things to me about my personality or behaviour. And each time I started to own it and take responsibility for it, was congruent with it. So if I was sad, and that was okay. If I felt angry, you know, I was sort of angry about loss, or, you know, the things that were happening, I acknowledge that those were true, those were feelings. I was going to bring those to the surface and examine them. And then what I noticed was, if I then channeled what I saw into something positive in the sense of I'd put it into, maybe I began writing, so I'd channel it into writing, I'd channel it into doing some kind of physical work. It changed again, and she changed again, because I was learning how to use emotions and energy for good use, good purpose. And she taught me very quickly how to own, take responsibility, and keep adjusting very subtly to the changes, environment and challenges that were coming my way. So the first step for me was, watching the body language, responding to it, and then choosing how I would make the next steps more fulfilling for both of us. So the body language, I think anyone out there, if you are with any animals, really look at the body language is the first place to get that communication.
Yeah, it's just so incredibly beautiful. And again, I have to go back to heart opening, because we really are not alone. We really are so supported,
yes,
in so many ways on this earth, with all of the different sentient beings that are around us. I believe seen and unseen, and
yes,
the consciousness of the horse is it. And actually, I will do another interview about what I believe is the consciousness of the horse, and delve into your understanding of it, because it really is so much deeper than looking at them as just as the consciousness of the horse. It goes way beyond that.
Yeah.
So,
I think they can open anything up to you. I think the purity within that consciousness within them, if you're willing to go and ride with that, then I believe the expanded awareness of a human being goes beyond anything that I think we could even think of in terms of logic.
Oh, absolutely. So Helen, share your website, and how, if the name of your sanctuary is called The Haven, and you are in England, but share your website and how people can find out more about you and your work.
Okay. Yeah, our website is www.belief444.com, and on Facebook it's books by Helen Brennand, and we do posts there of different things we get up to, and new things that are coming along, and hopefully things that people can engage with, and that's where we are. We're slowly growing and sharing our work.
And it's just absolutely beautiful work. So thank you, Helen Brennand, for being our guest, and for having the heart and the courage that you have to share your story. And Helen's story is shared in our new book, Chaos to Clarity, Sacred Stories of Transformational Change. And that's available through Amazon and booksellers worldwide, or direct from Sacred Stories Publishing. And I'd like to thank our audience for listening to the Sacred Stories podcast. I am your host, Reverend Patricia Caginello. And until next time, I encourage you to write your sacred story well.